Lppbbsg Primary Purposes four-step workshop. But before we get started, I'd like to do a little something that I do at every one of these and talk a little bit about why do we do a four-step. Um, and it's because when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I came in with a whole bunch of this, my emotional baggage. And I had been carrying it around since I was a little kid. So I got a couple of little buried treasures in here that I will share with you before we get on with the rest of everything that we do. So, oftentimes that emotional baggage starts in the home. Jim's knocking on the door. In the home with our mother and father and siblings, and maybe we can. I'll call you back, Mike. Maybe there's been some abuse. Maybe we come from a home with alcoholism or addiction or other things that are not a healthy environment for a child to grow up in. And this becomes our first impressions of life. And then we start getting into relationships and we get our first sweetheart in life, right? And we think that's it. This is going to save me. Life is going to be wonderful, and it doesn't work out. So we start hanging on to stuff, right? So here I have a picture that she gave me. It's about 14 she's ago, but I have this picture that she gave me, and I just keep it, and I keep it in this luggage that I haul around with me wherever I go. And then I have the picture of the love of my life. But I'm in a relationship with somebody else now, but I'm still hanging on to this picture of the love of my life. And actually this was the one until death did we part a few years ago. But everything can be going fine in a relationship, and all of a sudden you do something that reminds me of her. Now you're not her, but it reminds me of her, so I start turning you into her, or him as the case may be. And one of the things that's happening is I'm not fitting into your box in life, and you're not fitting into mine, because neither one of us is doing it the way that the other should be. So we become controlling and manipulative and sometimes very hateful and stuff. And oftentimes, how do relationships get started? I like to use the example of it's ladies' night out at the bar, and ladies going out to have a few cheap drinks with her girlfriend. I'm going out to buy a few cheap drinks, do a little dancing, and maybe go home and get a little something. And one day, 3 years later, we wake up next to each other and we don't even know who the hell that person is, because they are like nothing what they looked like in the bar. So all of a sudden, I'm starting to build in my mind this place of unhappiness and misery. So then, and oftentimes all of this is in the beginning centered around some sort of sex life, and that starts to fall. So what do? I go down to the local market where I can buy those magazines that require paper covers over them that are all inappropriate. No, none of these are inappropriate. But that's what I do. And then I come into the age of technology and a cell phone, and wow, there's all these cool apps and chat sites and stuff where I can start talking to people. And I'm feeding all of that affection and everything that my head says that I need, that I've never been able to give to myself, and I've never really found it with God before I get to Alcoholics Anonymous. And then as the relationship goes on, and like I said, I've got about 14 relationships in this little suitcase. What happens is anger gets introduced into the relationship, and maybe a little light violence, like I pick up your favorite statue and hurl it across the room. This poor little guy here, he's missing his head. But once the element of anger is introduced into a relationship, we have no hope. And we can never do anything when it comes to talking about the elephant in the room, which is my alcoholism, my behavior, the things that I'm doing, whatever it may be. This little elephant, he's an uncomfortable little fella to take and talk about. And then, of course, I have my favorite T-shirt here. Morris, I promise I won't do this to your T-shirts. This is the T-shirt that I refer to as the one with the hole in the soul, right? Because through all of these relationships, that hole just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And of course, my favorite way is I just wear it the easy way and toss it over my head like this. And that works out easy enough. And when all else fails, I go back to that thing that I did when I was a little kid, and I break because depression and fear and worry is a place of comfort for me. It's what's familiar. So I break out the old smelly blanket when things aren't going well. And I've wrapped myself up in that blanket, and oh my gosh, yes, oh, this feels so familiar, and I'm used to it. And so the purpose of the fourth step, I believe, is to overcome all of this emotional baggage. Not only what others have done to me, but most especially the things that I have done to others along the journey. So we just kind of like to do that little demonstration before we get started with the fourth-step workshop, because it is relatable, and I have yet to ever meet an alcoholic who hasn't gotten to Alcoholics Anonymous with some sort of emotional baggage one way or another. Trisha's going to pull up some slides, and we're going to get started, and we're going to build a little bit of foundation before we dive into step 4. Your turn, Trish.
Thanks. So welcome to the Lppbbsg Primary Purpose Big Book Study 4th Step Workshop. That's a mouthful to say. My name is Trish, and I'm an alcoholic, for those of you who don't know me, but I think everybody does. And for our meeting list, for podcasts of this meeting, and our Tuesday night Big Book Study, please visit our website. It's our initials, Lppbbsg.org. And our YouTube channel is also Lppbbsg Primary Purpose Big Book.
And let's open this up with the set-aside prayer. There's lots of versions of the set-aside prayer, but I like this the one the best, because personally for me, I'm asking God to take the me out of things I think I have the power over. So the set-aside prayer. God, please set aside everything I think I know about myself, the 12 steps, the big books, the meetings, my disease. But most especially, God, please set aside everything I think I know about you, so that I may have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please let me see the truth.
And our preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
I want to mention this before I forget it, and it'll probably come up in a slide. Please feel free to take pictures of any of the slides that you want, just not of anybody else. And we have stuff we can send out to you too. Please keep in mind that this is a workshop. We will be discussing some real-life examples of what could be difficult things for some. While questions are encouraged for clarification, we do not expect any specific discussion to encroach on topics that should be saved for your sponsor or a one-on-one conversation. Feel free to take notes as we go along. This workshop should not be used as a platform to start sharing your fifth step.
And please use your notebook to write down the slide number from down here in the lower right-hand corner. That way we can take all questions at the end, but you'll know which slide to refer us to if you need extra clarification or further understanding.
We used to take questions during as we went along, and one night it turned out almost 5 hours long, so we decided for time constraints we do it afterwards. Let's talk about our triangle in Alcoholics Anonymous for a little bit, because this is so very important. And it starts out with recovery being the bottom leg of the triangle. Recovery also is the mind, found in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, page XXV to page 164. It's a set of 12 spiritual principles that are the 12 steps. Have you continued to actively take the 12-step process outlined in the AA Big Books? And unity, which is the body, found in the fellowship, a set of 12 spiritual principles found in the 12 traditions. Do you have a group that you are committed to? Is your group committed to the 12 steps, and does your group live by the 12 traditions? And service and spirit, found in carrying the message, set of 12 spiritual principles found in the 12 concepts. This applies from the group level all the way through the service structure, all the way to GSO. Are you working with others and taking them through the 12 steps?
While this is a fourth step workshop, it is always good practice to review the foundation of steps 1, 2, and 3 before beginning. Therefore, we will be reviewing some hot spots to be sure that the foundation is intact, leading into step 4.
Through the information we read in the doctor's opinion, along with the first 44 pages, we are given the information we need to self-diagnose our alcoholism. Only 51 pages in all lead us to this decision. This is our step 1.
And our step 1 from page 30 in our book, Alcoholics Anonymous. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people, or presently may be, has to be smashed.
I love that little smashing. Being convinced from page 60, and we take a look at the ABCs in just a slightly different way here. A, am I convinced that I am an alcoholic and that my life is unmanageable? Step 1. B, am I convinced that no human power could have relieved my alcoholism? Still step 1. And C, am I convinced that there is a power greater than my own power that can and will relieve my problem? A and B, step 2.
So referring back to We Agnostics, and this is from pages 50 and 51, and this chapter is a pathway for us to learn how to let go of old ideas and old beliefs, and starts to open my heart and my mind to finding new ideas and new beliefs. And what the book says is, this happened soon after they wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements. Once confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence, they show the underlying reasons why they were making heavy going of life. Leaving aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. They show how the change came over them.
And we're going to go through pages 60 through 62, but we are going to read it in the first person. And this is how I find myself in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So beginning on page 60, if my arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as I wish, the show would be great. Everyone, including me, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, I may be sometimes quite virtuous. I may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, I may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, I am more likely to have varied traits.
What usually happens? The show doesn't come off very well. I begin to think life doesn't treat me right. I begin to exert myself more. I become, on the next occasion, still more demanding, or gracious, as the case may be. Still, the play does not suit me. Admitting I may be somewhat at fault, I am sure that other people are more to blame. I become angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is my basic trouble? Am I not really a self-seeker, even when trying to be kind? Am I not a victim of the delusion that I can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if only I manage well? Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things I want? And do not my actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show? Am I not, even in my best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony?
And Trish, I hope you hit wave pad because I forgot to, and if not, it's okay. I am self-centered, egocentric as people like to call it nowadays. I'm like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter complaining about the sad state of the nation. I'm like the minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century. I'm like politicians and reformers who are sure all would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave. I am like the outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him. I am like the alcoholic who has lost all and is locked up. Whatever my protestations, am I not mostly concerned with myself, my resentments, or my self-pity? Selfishness and self-centeredness, that I think is the root of my troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, I step on the toes of my fellows, and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt me, seemingly without provocation. But invariably I find at some point in time in the past I have made decisions based on self, which later placed me in a position to be hurt.
So my troubles, I think, are basically of my own making. They arise out of myself, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though I usually don't think so. Above everything, I must be rid of this selfishness. I must, or it kills me. God makes that possible. And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. Many of us have had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but I could not live up to them even though I would have liked to. Neither could I reduce my self-centeredness much by my wishing or by trying on my own power. I had to have God's help.
Now that the book has given us the ideas that our problem is based in self, we need a pathway toward finding out what our selfishness, self-centeredness, fears, and delusions are. This comes from the process of the four-step inventory. The first 3 columns are centered around our resentments and how they affected us. Everything after that looks at our own thoughts, actions, and patterns. This is the discovery process of who we have become.
So how? First of all, I have to quit playing God. And why? It didn't work.
Sure didn't. And our third step prayer, and before I go into our third step prayer, all of the stuff that we just read on from pages 60 through 62, could all of that be the foundation of what I'm asking God to do in me through this prayer? So our third step prayer, God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, the victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always.
Now we're going to look at the three aspects of a relationship with God, and this comes directly off of page 62. So the first is the actor and the director. A director runs the show. The actor listens for direction. On my own, have I failed to provide what I need to be okay? And am I ready to make the decision that hereafter God will direct my life? The principal and the agent. An agent represents who the principal or employer would have them be. Have I failed to be the person I would have me be? And have I failed to make others who I need them to be? Am I ready to make the decision that hereafter I will represent who God would have me be? And father-child. A child trusts their father can provide what they are incapable of doing on their own. Have I failed in directing my life on my own power? Am I ready to make the decision that hereafter I will trust that God will provide what I need?
Now, there's a whole lot of workbooks out here, folks, but this is what the real workbook looks like. There are many four-step workbooks available. However, the fourth step was never meant to be a check-the-box inventory. The instructions in the big book always say referring to our list, which we have written out in detail. So just a plain tablet and a whole bunch of pencils.
Before I begin, I will pray something like this. God, please help me see the truth about the things in myself which have been blocking me from you. I always want to say a prayer beginning and throughout this entire process to make sure that I'm inviting God in so that I'm seeing what God wants me to see and not letting my ego run all over.
So, this is the example that Bill gives us on page 65 of the book, but right now, for this moment, we're just going to work with the first two columns. And we start with our resentment list, and we are usually as definite of this example. First two columns, work each column from top to bottom, list all the names, and then list the causes. And why do we do it that way? Because when we get all the names out of the way, then we go to the causes as we go down. If we go across, what happens is we see something painful and we say, oh, hell no, I'm not doing that anymore. So, Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, my employer, and my wife. The cause with Mr. Brown, his attention to my wife. Told my wife of my mistress, and Brown may get my job at the office. Mrs. Jones, she's a nut. She snubbed me. She committed her husband for drinking, and he's my friend. She's a gossip. My employer, unreasonable or unjust, overbearing, threatens to fire me for drinking and padding my expense account. My wife, misunderstands and nags me. Oh, guess what? She likes Brown, and she wants the house put in her name.
And before I go on real quick, I just want to point out, on this particular list, there's 4 people that I'm resentful at. But there's 11 different resentments. 3 for Mr. Brown, 3 for Mrs. Jones, 2 for my employer, and 3 for my wife. And I could say I'm resentful at everybody for everything, but when I put it down on paper, it's only 11 things. It's not always as big as I'm telling myself, which means it's not as scary as I'm telling myself either. So my turn.
Yep. You saw me taking that long-winded breath, didn't you?
I did. You can have it if you want.
No, go for it.
So after I do these first 2 columns as directed in the book, I'm then going to look at the 3rd column. And again, I'm going to work top to bottom, not across. And the 3rd column, we look at the 7 areas of self, which begin on page 64. And those are self-esteem, pride, ambition, personal relations, sex relations, and pocketbook. So I'm going to add these into each one of these resentments. So I'm resentful at Mr. Brown. I have my 3 resentments against him. This affects my sex relations, and it affects my self-esteem. And then I'm going to put the word fear next to that in parentheses, because fear is wrapped up in so much of these. I'm resentful at Mrs. Jones. I've already got what the resentments or what the causes are. What does this affect? This affects my personal relations. And wouldn't you know, there's self-esteem again. It affects my self-esteem, and I'm going to put the word fear there again. I'm resentful at my employer. I've got what I'm resentful about. This affects my self-esteem, and in parentheses fear, and I'm also going to put down security because it's affecting my security. And I'm resentful at my wife. 3 resentments. This affects my pride, my personal and sex relations, and my security, and there comes that fear again.
Hang on, before you move on, Trish. Go back to that slide. Here's the significance of separating out those resentments. Because we talk about I'm resentful at so-and-so, and what am I resentful at? Everything. Okay, but when I start to break the resentments down, maybe it's easier for me to let go of the little things first so that it'll be easier when I get to that big one that really threw me over the edge. Okay, Trish, go ahead. I love this next slide.
This next slide is yours.
I know. All 3 of those columns are lies.
But those are my feelings.
And feelings aren't facts.
No, they're not. Feelings aren't facts. But feelings are valid, and we need to find out where they came from and then decide what are we going to do with them.
Why do we do inventory? And this comes from page 65 and 66. We went back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. When we were finished, we considered it carefully. The first thing apparent was that the world and its people were often quite wrong. To conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. The usual outcome was that people continued to wrong us and we stayed sore. Sometimes it was remorse, and then we were sore at ourselves. But the more we fought and the more we tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived.
There are people who will look at the chart on page 65 and say, this is the 4th step. However, there is so much more work to do. The full directions start on page 65 and they end on page 71. Page 72 then states, we have been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path. These are the causes and conditions that we talk about on page 64. Without these other columns, I am missing most of my discovery process. And the following slides are the rest of this process.
And continuing through the book, before each 4th column, we consider in paragraph form, how have I done the things I've resented in column 2, I've listed in column 1 and or others. Reference page 66, paragraph 4. This was our course. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick, like ourselves. After considering this realization, say the 4th step prayer. This is a sick person like myself. How can I be helpful to them? God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done. What I love about the sick man prayer is it gives me, even though it does not use the word forgiveness here, it plants the seed of forgiveness in my heart towards those who have harmed me. It is literally impossible for me to be angry and to be helpful to someone simultaneously. At least not without getting more resentful of it, that you put me in this position, you're making me help you. And then the prayer for me, God save me from being angry. That also plants the seed of forgiveness in my heart. And at the end of the day, forgiveness really isn't for them, it's for me.
I'm going to jump up to the first paragraph real quick. How have I done the things I've resented in column 2 to the person I listed in column 1? What does that mean? And in simple terms, you did something that made me mad. How often did I turn around and do the same thing right back to you or to somebody else? But we wanted to take the phrasing out of the book. So, if you put in your email for a copy of the worksheets we've come up with, this is what your first example page is going to look like. And it's going to be what we just looked at on the earlier slide. Before, yes, there are 4 names in the book. We didn't have room for it because we wanted it to be big enough to read. But we're going to list the individuals and we're going to list the causes or what our resentments are. And again, we're going to look. There's multiple resentments per person. It's not I'm mad at everything they've done. I've listed out specifically what it is that person's done that's made me angry. You're also going to get in our package a blank sheet that you can print off as many as you need. The example sheets that we have filled in are in the front part. The blank ones are in the back. So you can print off as many as you need if you want to use our forms to write it out.
And there will be about 14 example pages for the whole process as we go through all of this. The 7 areas of self. The third column focuses on the 7 areas of self, and these are found on page 64 and 65 in the big book. Our focus will be on self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, pocketbook. I ask myself, how do my resentments affect me in these areas of my life? Keep in mind, the sex relations has nothing to do with the act of sex here. Rather, it focuses on male, female, same-sex relationships in today's world, the relationships of whatever partner we may have. While pride is not listed on these pages, it is included in the 7 deadly sins, which are discussed in the 12 and 12, step 4, page 48. It also ties closely with self-esteem and gives me a different perspective on looking at myself. And the 7 deadly sins are pride, greed, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, and sloth.
So this is what our 4th column page looks like. And I like it written out this way on its own separate sheet, because when I start doing these columns, I'm going to take my piece of paper, separate it into columns, and when I fill up the column, I'm going to say, I'm done. But if I use a full sheet of paper for this 4th column, I'm not going to run out of space until I run out of words. And I know now that's just an excuse to not do the work, but I was full of them back then. So up in the upper left-hand corner, we have the 7 areas of self again, just for a reminder. Self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, and pocketbook. I'm going to use 1 page per resentment. So Mr. Brown, I had 3 different resentments, so Mr. Brown's going to have 3 different pieces of paper. My employer had 2 different resentments, so my employer's going to have 2 different pieces of paper. So this just gives me a different layout of this 4th column. And at the top of every page, I'm always going to write, or I'm going to read, because it's on the sheets that we'll send you, a reminder. God, please let me see the truth. I want to make sure I'm including God in this process. And my instructions for using the 7 areas of self. First, I write in that upper right-hand corner, the first name, Mr. Brown. The first resentment, his attention to my wife. The next page would be the 2nd resentment. The next page would be the 3rd resentment. So I'm working each resentment one at a time. There is some overlapping. There could be. But this way we could focus just on one resentment. Like Jamie said, we can get rid of the smaller ones easier. Sometimes those bigger ones are harder to pull out, root ball and all. So I'm going to look at that third column and consider the opposite of each sentence, and then let the inventory reveal my fears behind each of the 7 areas of self. So self-esteem, and we define that by how do I see or how do I feel about myself? What's the role I have assigned myself in this person's life? Most of the time sentences are going to start with I am. So with the resentment towards my wife, the example could be I'm the best husband she could have. Or it could be I'm the worst breadwinner that there is. Look at the one and also look at the opposite of it. What are the fears that are involved here? Are there any fears? And what could be the fears listed here? In this part we had to take a little bit of liberty with it because it's not a part of that picture on page, or the table on page 59. The fears. The fear of not being good enough. The fear of somebody stealing my wife. Pride. How I think others see or feel about me. Or what is the role I have assigned to myself to play in others' lives? Start sentences with others should, or maybe others should not. Others should not pay so much attention to my wife. And the fears there to consider. The fear of being alone and the fear of abandonment.
And continuing with the 7 areas of self, ambition. What do I want to happen here? Sentences start with, and the example is, I want a healthy, happy relationship. Or maybe just the opposite. I want to be left alone, damn it. What's the fear associated with that? Fear of being alone and losing everything. Security. What do I need to be okay here? Sentences start with I need. For example, I need my wife to love and respect me. I need Brown to respect my marriage. Identify the fear, being disrespected or maybe being unlovable. Personal relations. My deep-seated beliefs of how this relationship is supposed to look. Examples. Wives trust their husbands. Friends should respect me, my marriage, my family, etc. The fear associated with that, not being accepted and maybe not being respected. And sex relationships, my deep-seated beliefs of how real men or women are supposed to be. Sentences start with a real man or real woman. Example, real men don't pursue other men's wives. Identify the fear, maybe it's abandonment. Pocketbook. Affects my finances. Sentences start with no one should or shouldn't. Others should not go into my wallet without my permission. No one should go into my phone without my permission. Brown should not ask my wife for dinner and then ask her to pay for it. Here's why all of this, and we go into a lot deeper detail here at just giving you ideas, because so oftentimes people just say, oh, it's fear, but they never define what the fear is. And when I define what the fear is and where it comes from, then I can start to live in a spiritual solution to outgrow that fear. One of the reasons that the pocketbook or phone is so important in today's world, how many of us do business on our phone through an app, Venmo, PayPal, something like that? If you get your hands on my phone and you Venmo yourself $500 out of my checking account, and the bank is going to tell me, well, you let them have your phone, didn't you, dummy? So we have to be careful of the kind of access that we let people go through to have today. The same thing applied in 1939 as it does today. We just have some more things that, because of technology, that cause us more difficulty in life, and that's the reason that we take a deeper look at it.
So again, on the left side is what the example page is going to look like that we would send to you. The right side is the blank page for you to fill in. Now on the left side, even though on here it has a yellow background, when we send it to you, it will be on a white background because we don't want to kill your printer ink if you're going to be printing it off so you can look at it as you go. So the fourth column worksheet, and this is where I discover my defects of character and my shortcomings. The directions start on page 67 on paragraph 2 in the big book. Here I'm going to use 1 page per individual, not 1 page per resentment. And I resolutely look for the harms that I have done to others and list where I am to blame. This will be the foundation for my 8th step. And this form may also need to be modified, but it can be used for institutions. Just have to change a little bit of the wording there. Why? Because it says, I continue to recognize my own fears. And the direction for our fear inventory is going to be listed on slide 68.
Towards the end, boy, we only have another 30 slides to go. And again, at the top of the page, this is an example of the fourth column and what it should look like when it's completed. This can be done in phrases and not full sentences. Most of us have good memories. No need to write your full life story. But again, at the top of the page, God, please show me the truth. And we've taken that part of it out of you and we've already put it on the page so that you don't have to write that every time, but it will be there as a reminder. I love this part. The realization of how I've done the things I've resented in column 2 to the person I've listed in column 1 or others, and I'm just going to break it down like this. You did this to me, so I'm doing this to you, right? That payback state of mind, right? And if we honestly do that, we see where we have done the same sorts of things in order to pay people back or so they get their comeuppance. So, in looking at this, where had I been selfish? Self-seeking. Look around the whole resentment. What did I do? Where was I to blame? My selfish actions and or activities were what? Who did I affect? Who else did I pull into this drama? I placed blame, I acted out, I called your boss to tattle. I said I was going with my friends, but I was going out to get laid. Selfishness. What was my selfish actions while I was doing the above self-seeking actions? My selfish attitudes were, what? I demanded to get my own way. I was filing divorce papers in my mind while we were in bed. I had it all planned out and you were going to pay. I would cut you off.
Where had I been dishonest? What were the lies I was telling myself that resulted in my selfish thinking that then led to the self-seeking actions? Where was I living in delusion? I could find someone better. You would never be good enough. You didn't care about me or our family. And afraid. What were the fears that drive the delusions or the lies above that I was telling myself? Where was I afraid? I was afraid I would be alone, even though I didn't want you. The children wouldn't have their other parent. I wouldn't be able to pay the bills and we would be homeless. I feared for my safety and sometimes for retaliation. The fears drive the dishonesty or the lies that result in the selfish attitude and thinking behind those self-seeking actions. So those fears really do drive our behaviors.
Consider if there's any other fears that should be on the list. Consider the opposite of each fear, if it applies, and add it to the list. Don't just look at the negative. Look for the positives as well. I fear being alone, or meeting another abusive partner. I fear being homeless, or I fear having to move back in with my parents. I fear losing my job for the lies I told when I was out. I fear my truth. I fear being successful. I fear having too many friends. You know, the thing about here again, defining fears is so important to understanding where they come from, what their origin is, because if not, we will just take and we will throw a blanket of fear over everything. And then harms. Do I see the harm that I caused? Look around the whole resentment. Did I cause harm to parents, friends, employers, innocent bystanders, friends I complained to who had nothing to do with the situation? I have harmed my spouse, my children with my lies. I've harmed my boss by not showing up to work. I've harmed my relationship with other family members. I've harmed my credit and financial status due to my selfish actions. I've harmed friendships by complaining about my spouse to them. And I know it sounds silly, but this is all stuff that we do because it's human behavior.
Those innocent bystanders were always the ones that got me. Because they're not involved, why do I need to talk to them? But then I had to realize that if I'm fighting with my husband, who's the one I'm going to talk to about it? My girlfriend. And I'm going to expect that she's going to take my side. And if my husband's talking to her husband, he's going to take his side. So now we're fighting and they're fighting. So it really can be those innocent bystanders who had nothing to do with it, but I just drag them on in because misery loves company.
Jerry Springer Show.
Not today. So the fear inventory. I'm going to read the big book from page. Do you want to do your blanket or no, since you have Doji in your lap?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I do. I do.
Because you missed that last time.
Yes, we did. So back to the old smelly blanket here. There you go. Back to the old smelly blanket here. What do? We throw out the word fear, and here again, we don't define what it is. And we throw it over everything. Oh, that's fear. Oh, this is fear over here. And that's fear over here. Until we end up wrapping ourselves up in it and hiding in it. And that's when the depression comes in, because we are paralyzed by fear. So this slide's going to give us a little direction on what to do with the fear. But fear can be so paralyzing. It's like driving in the fog. You ever drive in the heavy, thick fog? And what do we generally do? We put the death grip on the steering wheel, and we're like, oh God, just get me through this. Just get me through this. Because we know if we stop, somebody like me in a big truck is going to come along and run over you, and you can barely see the hood. But we keep saying, God, please just get me through this. And eventually the fog begins to lift as we go through the process. The same thing will happen here with fears as well. You can unpin me or unspotlight. Thank you. That's the last time, I promise. No more spotlights for me tonight.
So we're going to start out by reading the big book from page 67, the third paragraph, where it says, notice the word fear, to 68, the third paragraph, ending with outgrow fear. Then I'm going to list all my fears, and I'm going to make a graph of columns, or use the fear inventory template, which we've come up with and is also included in the packet of stuff we can send you. We're going to focus on the first column and then look at each row individually, just like the table that's on page 59. We work down first, then we work across.
65.
Thank you.
59.
Thank you. Then I'm going to take all the fears that I wrote in my inventory and I'll make one single list all the way down the first column. But I'm only going to list each fear once. I'm not going to list duplicates. Then I'm going to ask myself, why do I have this fear? And when I ask myself, I'm going to look all the way around each fear, and then the next slide will show how to follow what we've started calling the trail of fears by looking at the fears hidden behind each fear. Why? because on page 68 it says, "We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper even though we had no resentment in connection with them. We asked ourselves why we had them. And wasn't it because self-reliance failed us?"
So let's take an example of the trail of underlying fears. And I absolutely love this slide because it makes so much sense to me. I fear being not good enough. If I'm not good enough, I fear I'll be unwanted. I fear being unwanted. If I'm unwanted, I fear being alone. I fear being alone because I fear the emotional pain of being alone. I fear sitting in the emotional pain. If I sit in the pain long enough, I fear I'll drink. I fear drinking. For me, drinking is to die. I fear dying because I fear the unknown. I don't know what dying really means. I fear the unknown because I fear there is no God. I fear there is no God, so I repeatedly trust self-reliance, even though I fear self-reliance fails me. But wasn't I trying to kill myself anyway? Is this alcoholic insanity? Is this how I should think the drink through? I am setting myself up for a drink when I am drowning in fear.
Now we're going to take that same slide that Jamie just read and put it into what our template looks like. And in that first column, if we had completed the inventory, listed all of our fears, that first column would be full. Maybe not full, but it would have more than just one. So that fear, I'm not good enough. What's the fear behind being not good enough? I fear I'm unwanted. You don't want me anymore. And what's the fear of being unwanted is I'm going to be alone. I don't like being alone. I don't like sitting in my head when I'm alone. I don't like all the icky feelings that go when I'm sitting by myself. So what's the fear of being alone? It's the fear of that emotional pain that I'm going to end up sitting in and growing roots and never moving again. And what's the fear behind that emotional pain? It's the fear that I'm going to drink again. And what's the fear of drinking again? I fear I'm going to die. The fear of dying is the fear of the unknown, because I don't know if there's a God. Because I don't have self-reliance. I'm still on me-reliance. Now, this is one example of our trail of fears. Each of us will need to follow the trail to identify our own fears in the trail. And when we get to slide number 53, we'll look at some repeated fears. And that way we can use as a pattern in our inventory when we take that to our sponsor. Your turn.
Of course. Let's talk a little bit about sex, the sex inventory and sex ideal from pages 68 and 69. Right out of the book, folks. Now about sex. Many of us needed an overhauling there. But above all, we tried to be sensible on this question. It is so easy to get way off track. Here we find human opinions running to extremes, absurd extremes perhaps. One set of voices cry that sex is the lust of our lower nature and a base necessity of procreation. Then we have the voices who cry for sex and more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage, who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. They think we do not have enough of it, or it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. One school would allow man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us all on a straight pepper diet. We want to stay out of this controversy. We do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. What can we do about them? We reviewed our own conduct over the past years. Where had we been selfish? And these are all questions we ask ourselves. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where were we at fault? What should we have done instead? We got all this down on paper and looked at it.
And the sex inventory and sex ideal instructions. The following are the directions for the sex inventory in question form, taken right out of the book. And like with all the other parts, we always ask God to show us what we need to see before getting started. So we're going to read the big book from page 68, the fourth paragraph, now about sex, where Jamie was just reading, all the way to page 70, the second paragraph, where it says, would bring heartache. And then pray, and make a list of all the relationships in my life. Some of us may have a few, some of us may have many, but it's our own personal inventory. And then 3, determine what can be done. Write a brief history of each relationship, including motives for getting involved, specific sex conduct, major points in the relationship, and how the relationship ended, or how it is now.
Excuse me. I review my conduct, look at each relationship, and answered the following questions. There's a total of 9 of them. Where had I been selfish? Where had I been dishonest? Where had I been inconsiderate? Whom did I hurt? Including those we brought into our drama, including the innocent bystanders. Did I arouse jealousy? Did I arouse suspicion? Did I arouse bitterness? Where was I at fault? What should I have done instead? The answer to the last question is never. I shouldn't have gotten involved because I can't change the past. I did get involved, and this has now become an experience of my life. Refer instead to what should I have done or how should I have behaved in the relationship. Make sure you are especially complete with this answer, since it will later be used when writing my sex ideal.
And when I start writing my sex ideal, I'm going to refer to page 69 and 70. In this way, we try to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? We asked God to mold our ideals and to help us live up to them. We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly nor selfishly, nor to be despised and loathed. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm in so doing. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it. God alone can judge our sex situation. Counsel with persons is often desirable, but we let God be the final judge. We realize that some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice.
Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does this mean we are going to get drunk? Some people tell us so. That is only a half-truth. It depends on us and our motives. If we are sorry for what we have done and have an honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe that we will be forgiven and will have learned our lesson. If we are not sorry for our conduct, it's not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink. We are not theorizing. These are facts of our own experience. To sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity and for the strength to do the right thing. If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. It takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge to yield imperious urge when to yield would mean heartache. The reading continues through the end of the chapter on page 71, encouraging us to review our work and then move forward towards amends. This also encourages us to continue to align ourselves with God so that He can remove whatever self-will has blocked me off from Him. And Trish, we still need to put the original page number up in that right-hand corner on that
It's
slide.
on that one. So the following slides are a real working example of a fourth step inventory. It follows the first person in column 1 all the way from first resentment through all 4 columns, discovery along the trail of fears, and ending with the sex inventory and sex ideal. This takes us through the entire inventory process starting on page 65 to the end of page 71 and completes step 4 on this one resentment. And we decided to throw this in because rather than looking at some fictitious person, Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones in the book, using an actual fourth step item, an actual resentment that could be from anybody's fourth step, really. And then how it could work itself through all the steps all the way to the end.
So, yeah, I'll do that in a second, Nikki. So here's why we felt it was important to do an example of a real life inventory as opposed to the hypothetical that Bill gives us in examples, because it's relatable. All of us have been through some sort of this one way or another. So we thought a real life example of what it should look like when it's all done would be helpful to this workshop. So here again, for top of the page, God, please let me see the truth about who I am resentful at. Resentment inventory. This will be column 1 and 2 from the big book. Make a list of people whom you have a resentment. Then list each resentment with each person. Sorry, folks, I've been up since 1 o'clock this morning. It's been a long day. So, in this example, the first person is Dad, and the cause of the resentment. He abandoned our family and left us with nothing and nowhere to go. Use the following pages to continue with 1 page per resentment. Multiple resentments would mean multiple pages. So here's why we do that, folks. Again, anybody ever cook a pot of spaghetti noodles and let them stick together? They're real hard to pull apart, aren't they? So what this does, all these resentments are like a stuck together pile of spaghetti noodles, and what it does is it lets us pull it out one noodle at a time, and we may be able to forgive those smaller things as we get towards the bigger one.
So now we're looking at column 3. And again, here we're looking at the 7 areas of self: self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, and pocketbook. And on the top of my page it says, please write, God, please let me see the truth. It's already there, but it's a reminder to say that prayer. Write over it, color it in, something to remind ourselves, I've got to take God into this process with me. I'm resentful at my father. I'm resentful at him because he abandoned our family and left us with nothing and nowhere to go. This affects my self-esteem. I am not good enough for him to stick around. He loved my brother more. And the fears that could be associated with that. The fear of not being good enough, the fear of being alone, and the fear of abandonment. This affects my pride. No father should be angry or violent to a 3-year-old. Fathers shouldn't leave their sons. And the fears, anger, violence, being unlovable, and abandonment.
And, you know, folks, while some of this is uncomfortable language or verbiage, if you will, we felt it was important to talk about because this is the stuff that we always say when we do our 4-step. I ain't never telling anybody about that. I'm taking it to my grave. Yet we don't have to. So that's why we felt it was important to do this. Continuing through the 7 areas of self, this affects my ambition. What do I want? I want my dad back. I want to be loved by my dad. I want my dad to be a role model. And the fear associated with that is abandonment, not having a role model, not having a strong father presence in my life. This affects my security. I need to feel safe to be okay. I need to feel loved to be okay. That's a natural instinct for all of us. I need to have shelter and food to be okay. The fear associated with that is maybe homelessness, hunger, being hurt, alone, emotional pain, or being unlovable. This affects my personal relationships. Real men don't leave their families. Real men support their families. The fear associated with that, being alone, not knowing how to treat others. This affects my sex relations. Real men don't bring people home into their homes to have sex with their families and then leave to have sex somewhere else. The fear associated with that is abandonment, maybe sexual abuse or molestation, not being safe, fear of not knowing what a healthy relationship is. This affects my pocketbook. Others should not threaten my home, my food, utilities, finances, etc. The fear associated with that is homelessness, abandonment, going hungry, not being able to pay my bills. And a lot of these things may overlap. Some of these things may never have happened to any of you, and that's fine if they didn't. These are just examples of what do happen with some of us. And it gives us ideas of how, step 4 says a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, right? All I'm trying to get to is what the truth is here. Go ahead, Trish.
So now we're looking at the 4th column. God, let me please see the truth. And I'm looking at me to look for my patterns, my defects of character, and my shortcomings. And the realization, did I repeat or develop the same behaviors that I resented in column 2 to the person that I listed in column 1 or others? And that's from page 66. Or in other words, you did this to me, so I turned around and did it right back to you and to everybody else in my path. So where had I been self-seeking? I acted out to get my own way. I put unreasonable demands on my father, my mother, my other family members. I knew emotional drama would always get me attention. Is that manipulation? And I blamed you for my problems. Where had I been selfish? What was I thinking that caused me to do these these self-seeking actions? I didn't care what others had to do what others had to sacrifice to please me. I constantly demanded attention. When I didn't get the attention, I accused others of not loving me. Where had I been dishonest? What were the lies I was telling me that started that thinking, that started those self-seeking behaviors? I would always tell lies. I would steal things. If I got in trouble, I would blame others. I had been so dishonest for so long, I couldn't see what the truth was. And the biggest tragedy I see now is all that lying I was doing to me.
Where had I been afraid? I was afraid of being caught in my lies. I was afraid that I wouldn't be loved because of my lies. I was afraid I would always be alone and not wanted by anyone. The above fears drive the delusions that result in the attitudes behind the action. Consider if there's any other fears that should be on the list. Consider the opposite of each fear if it applies and add it to the list. And here's a couple of examples. I had fear of abandonment or of staying in a toxic relationship. Fear of being alone or filling my life with the wrong people. Fear of too many people in my life or fear of being invisible to others, staying in a bad relationship, or not being financially stable enough to be on my own. We
And,
stay in sick relationships for a long time for a number of reasons.
and those ors that we put in there, those big capital letter ors, it doesn't necessarily mean it's one or the other. Pick one. It could be both. But the or is just in there to say these could be opposites. Having the fear of abandonment, but I also have the fear of staying in a toxic relationship. They're two sides to the same coin, but I could have both fears at the same time. So it's not a pick one. Maybe it's a pick both for some of us. So now our trail of fears. And this time you'll see that first column is filled in all the way down, not one, not two, but, 2 pages. I'm not going to read all the pages to you. That would take another 2 hours in adding to this. But I'm going to go across a couple of the lines so that this first one, you're going to recognize it just for review. I have the fear of not being good enough. What's the fear behind not being good enough? That's the fear of being unwanted. What's the fear of being unwanted? The fear of being alone. What's the fear behind that? The fear of having that emotional pain. And the fear of having and feeling the emotional pain is the fear that I'm going to sit in that emotional pain. I'm going to sit there. I'm going to grow roots. I'm never going to leave this spot again. And what's the fear of sitting in that emotional pain is I'm going to drink again. And why do I have the fear of drinking? What's the fear behind that? The fear of death or insanity. And then the fear of the unknown and the fear that there is no God. Can't really take that a whole lot further than that. So I'm going to go down to the next row. And the fear that I found doing those first 2 columns was the fear of being alone. But if I look in that top row, in that 3rd column, it already says being alone. So I put those X's in there just to tell myself stop. I've already discovered and uncovered what the fear of being alone, or where the fear of being alone could take me. So I'm going to drop down again. The fear of abandonment. What's the fear of abandonment? The fear of being alone. 3 times this fear of being alone has come up. And I'm only on the 3rd column, or the 3rd row. Now I'm starting to see a pattern. No matter what that fear is, it's leading me back to being alone. It may be a pattern I need to discuss with my sponsor when I start doing my 5th step. Gonna come down one more. The fear of anger. Why do I have the fear of anger? Because it's an unpredictable emotion. And why do I fear that? Because I don't know what I'm capable of. And what's the fear of not knowing what I'm capable of? It's that emotional pain that it gives me. Because I don't know what I'm going to do when I get angry. And look up in that first row, right underneath, or right above it, emotional pain. So now, 1, 2, 3, 4 different fears we've looked at, and I've come up with 2 already that are duplicates. Gonna go down just one more time. The fear of violence towards me. Underneath that is the fear of being hurt. I don't know of anybody who likes to or wants to be hurt. But it is a fear. What's the fear behind being hurt? The fear of the emotional pain that comes with that. So now we've got 5 different rows, 5 different fears that we've looked at, and they've come back 2 times to being alone and to being in that emotional pain. The first time I used this template for my fears, I found that no matter what my fears were, no matter how many fears I listed on that piece of paper, they all came back to like 4 or 5 basic fears for me. So now when I feel like I'm sitting in those fears, when I'm stuck, when I'm getting paralyzed, I know what those 5 are, and I can ask myself, is it this? Is it this? And it's usually one of those 5. I might have to dig a little bit, but almost always I find those fears that the first time I did this kept repeating. I still see those coming up sometimes, but I can identify them a lot quicker now. Your turn. Sex.
Always bring me back to that, don't you? Here again, this is our sex inventory, and it really has nothing to do with what your appetite might be. This is a real working example of a sex inventory. This inventory is based on a list I made from the history of relationships from page 69. This is not continuing the work on column 1. This is an inventory on our own conduct in relationships, not based on relationships. So I write the name and I write the relationship, and I write a brief history and what my motives for getting involved were. He or she sure was cute. He or she sure was friendly. He or she sucked me in with their smile and made me melt. There's generally in relationships there's some sort of physical attraction. I wasn't looking for a rocket scientist, and so my specific conduct in the relationship has been, my specific conduct was totally self-seeking, so I could feel better about myself. Others commented on how cute my boyfriend or girlfriend was. That's that's just to feed my ego, to feed my pride.
The major points that came up in the relationship are: I don't play well with others. I always want my own way, always sexually motivated somehow. I want control in every situation, whether it's sexual or not. I would do whatever it took to keep you from leaving me. We would fight over spending time with my family over holidays. Religion and politics, discussions on those touchy subjects, they would usually always lead to more fighting and sometimes to more beatings. How it ended, or how it is now: I walked away in anger because you didn't do what I wanted. Or, I acted like a brat enough and you left. That way, I wasn't the bad one for leaving. But the reality is, the relationship on both our parts was so sick and so toxic that leaving was a means of survival. And just a footnote, after the process of taking the steps and making the amends, some of these relationships have healed and have become healthy friendships. The important part is that I have taken a look at and taken a responsibility for my part. And I do have some relationships which over time healed, and we've become the best of friends. We're never going to go back to where we were. It's never going to be a relationship, but we can still be friendly and almost best of friends as a result of those amends and both of us looking at ourselves.
So, the sex inventory worksheet. And here again, this is a real example, and it's based on the inventory from page 69. And all of those questions. Look at each relationship and answer the 9 questions referencing page 69. Where had I been selfish, concerned only with myself? I wanted sex all the time, or I never wanted sex. I was demanding. When I didn't want sex, I pushed you away and rejected you. I demanded unhealthy or unreasonable sex. 2, where had I been dishonest, deceptive, or fraudulent? I said you were the only one, but you weren't. I said I was going to work early, but I stopped by to see my girlfriend first. Where had I been inconsiderate, disregard for others? I did not consider your feelings. I did not consider your plans. I decided to stay late at work and then went to see my girlfriend. Boy, that girlfriend seems to be a repetitive pattern, doesn't it?
Nah. Who did I hurt? And I need to look around the entire relationship. I hurt my spouse. I hurt our children. I hurt my boyfriend's children. I hurt extended family members. I hurt my relationships at work when they caught me in my lies, especially if that boyfriend's a coworker. How did I arouse jealousy? I constantly openly flirted with others in front of my husband. I flirted with my friends' husbands in front of them. How did I arouse suspicions? How did I make you doubt my honesty? I lied about where I was going to be and when I would be home. I would constantly take phone calls and texts when I was home, and I wouldn't let you know who it was from, what it was about. I'd always leave the room, lots of secrets. Or I'd call you from his house, but didn't realize his parrot was squawking in the background. And then I couldn't figure out how you knew I was there. How did I arouse bitterness and deep resentment? I left our family gatherings to see his family instead. I paid his rent and neglected our family. I lashed out in anger, always defensive. But he needs me! And where was I at fault? I put my family second over his family and their needs.
The important question, what should I have done instead? Don't write, never gotten involved in the first place. What should my behavior in the relationship have been? Make sure you are especially explicit about number 9. You will refer back to this list for writing your sex ideal. I should have put my family first, been honorable and faithful, financially and emotionally supportive to my family. I should have been kind, loving, and tolerant. I should have taken care of others' needs before mine. I should have prayed and asked God for help. And harms, write any specific harm that comes to you while writing. The realization that I caused deep emotional wounds in family that may never be repaired. Many of the things I did can be considered abusive or narcissistic. In my experience, I have caused unknown and sometimes irreversible damage to the lives of others. In prayer, God, I ask you to mold the ideal relationship, what the ideal relationship should be in my life, that I may be able to live by that idea and live in a healthy relationship with others. Amen. Hang on before you change that, Trish. So, wife number 1 and I got pregnant when she had just turned 18 and I was still 17. And we had a child, and we brought a child into this world. And like so many first marriages don't work out, that child ended up in a broken home. See you later, brother. Thanks for being here. That child came from a broken home. And for 32 years, we didn't have any contact. And I finally found her when I was 18 years sober. She still carries emotional pain. She's been back in my life for 15 or 16 years. But she still carries deep emotional pain. I have done, to the best of my ability, everything to make amends. The rest is between her and God, but I can't make her do something that she doesn't want to do. So healing is time, and it's a process, and it's not an overnight matter. And I have to be okay with it however it turns out. And I am. Just thought I'd share that with you.
So now that we have followed the instructions and taken a look at ourselves and our contact, let us now turn to page 69 in paragraphs 3 and 4 and refer to the instructions in finding our sexual ideal. In this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? We asked God to mold our ideals and to help us to live up to them. We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm in so doing. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it.
Thanks, Jim. See you tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. There are 12 steps and 12 traditions for recovery. There are 11 chapters in our book. Is it possible that the chapter 12 in your book will be your own story. So how will it read? Finding yourself through this inventory could be the beginning of your chapter 12. It is now up to you to write your chapter 12.
And a brief fifth step note. The bottom of page 74 to the top of page 75 gives us the directions on how to choose who is to hear our fifth step. Its suggestion is that we choose someone that will keep our confidentiality. This could be a priest, minister, rabbi, or counselor, people who are bound to confidentiality by law. However, experience has taught us the value of taking this step with another alcoholic, or sponsorship. We believe that the advantage to this is that the experience of another alcoholic knows where to direct us next through the process of recovery. We recommend that you prayerfully ask God to bring the right person into our lives to help us through this process.
We hope you will continue to join us for our bi-monthly workshop, as this work is only a beginning into the truth about ourselves. It is our experience that when people return month after month with new questions, we all grow in effectiveness and understanding. We continue to ask God to mold us into the people He would have us be, so that we can help others find their truth. Yours in love and service, Lppbbsg. And now we are open for questions, comments, whatever experience, whatever you like, folks. Don't be shy.
Nothing? Good night, Vicki.
Night, Vicki.
Quiet crowd tonight.
It is. And that's okay too. It's a lot of information to absorb.
One thing to keep in mind is Jamie and I have often come back into Zoom with somebody one-on-one, two-on-one, to go over the slides, to ask questions as you're working through the process. If you realize, I don't understand this, I don't get this, we're always willing to come in and go through all the slides or some of the slides with you if you have any questions about anything. Nancy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for doing this workshop. And it's really like every time I go in it, I see things differently and remember other things that's happened in my past that I'd forgotten. And I am feeling horrible. I've been throwing up. So I'm going to I just wanted to say thank you. And I have to go to the bathroom. So thank you. I'll see you tomorrow.
Love you, Nancy.
Good night,
See you
Nancy.
tomorrow.
I love you too.
Any thoughts, Nikki? Was it helpful at all?
I related to a lot of it because seriously, I was raised with a narcissistic mother who raised me through fear. And every moment of the time, daily, I feel fear. And I have to turn this negative energy and turn it into a positive source so I can move forward. It's exhausting. And that's the fear part. And then, this also includes overall the dysfunction in families. When the father is not there, the mother is there, or the mother's not and the father is. Or they both abandon you, in my case. So it's very difficult to express yourself because you're opening a wound. They're all wounds. So I hope I have a lot of tourniquet to put around my arms so I don't bleed to death.
Oh, Oh, you won't bleed to death, my friend. Here's what I can tell you.
What?
I kept re-feeling all of that emotional baggage until I dealt with it through step 4,
Yeah.
right? And once I discovered the truth, and my sponsor, who passed away a few months ago, I'm sorry you did not get the opportunity to meet him, but Donald and Trish have, and Trish has met him in person. Um, when I shared the first resentment against my father, he stood back and he said, he asked me a question: "Are you willing to forgive that person?" And I'm like, "Hell no! Don't you understand what they did to me?" And in his wisdom, he just lit a cigarette and leaned against the pool table and didn't say a word, and he let me think about it. So here's what came to me. If I want to be forgiven for the harms that I have done, it is a reasonable idea that I need to have forgiveness in my heart towards others. If it's true what we ask in the Lord's Prayer, to be forgiven as we forgive, then I need to have the spirit of forgiveness in my heart. I walked away with forgiveness on everybody on my resentment list that night except for my father, but here's what I walked away with. Someday I can develop the spirit of forgiveness in my heart towards him. I didn't think about it for many years, and it wasn't as painful. But 7 years ago, when I went to California, and I found out where his grave was, and met a sister I never knew I had, who's 23 years younger than me, my sister told me of what my father's life was like from birth. And all of a sudden, all of that anger and bitterness melted away, and it was filled with love and compassion. And so I sat and I wrote a letter, and I went to his grave, and I read that letter, and I wept, and I kissed his grave, and I slid my 28-year medallion down in his headstone. And I walked away a free man.
Yes.
Because of forgiveness. And then I was telling my other little sister about it a month or two later, and she told me something I never knew, that my mother told her but didn't tell me. That one time my father had beaten my mother so badly that he almost killed her. And of course she was pregnant with a younger brother. And all of a sudden, all that anger and rage welled back up for about 2 minutes. And I said, wait a second, I have already forgiven him for everything he's already done. I cannot continue. And the forgiveness is for me. That's the beauty of all of it. So hopefully that will be helpful.
Yes. A lot of it was. I liked it. I liked the workshop.